Hello, beautiful ladies, and welcome to another Wamen Hour, where we're having a very special topic tonight, talking about maths and the compulsory maths education, which has now been in the news this week and last week. And with me to talk about maths, we have, let's start with Havenwoods. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. It's nice to be here.
Our favourite chicken mama. And,
Indeed.
and Cows, welcome back.
Hello, nice to be here. Sorry about my voice. I'm very sick.
You sound the same, and
Okay.
Your microphone sounds good, so we're not going to get any complaints about that tonight.
Okay, sweet.
Birdie's going to join us when she can. Birdie, if you can hear us, just pipe up
whenever you're back.
I'm
back.
Okay.
I made it. I am back. Speaking of microphones, as I said to you beforehand, I do apologise. I might sound like I'm underwater at the moment, so.
You sound okay. It's not the best you've sounded, but we do value your contribution in whatever form it comes. Speaking of contributions, I forgot to really do the super chat patter last week, talking about how we choose the topics. But we did have a kind of topic suggestion last week that it could have flew under the radar, but because there were no other topic suggestions, either higher paying or otherwise, this person won our topic suggestion lottery auction last week without even really noticing. So that person was asking for us to address Steven Universe, which is, I think, a show that Cows. I think did you say you've seen that?
Yeah.
All right.
We
maybe another time.
Talk about it a little bit.
I've seen maybe 2 episodes and hated both of them. So.
Well, it's a controversial topic, but it did get me thinking. I've been addressing a lot of TV and movies in December, especially. It was quite heavy. We had Master and Commander, we had Frozen with not on Wamen Hour, but with Pharaoh on a different stream, and we talked about Bluey in the episode before that with Cows. So I'm trying to lay off on the media content lately, but it did get me thinking, because I love to talk about TV and shows and books and things so much that I wondered whether I should start a new live stream parallel to Women's Hour, where we, on a different night of the week, I could have a guest on and just talk about whatever TV or movie show TV show or movie that we want to watch, similar to Proper Horror Show. Havenwood's other half has a horror movie podcast every week that has a guest and you know the topic ahead of time, so you can watch it along and talk about it. And I really love to watch that kind of content and to talk about the films that I love and the TV that I love. So I do wonder if what the panel thinks about that, and what the chat thinks about doing something like that, where it wouldn't always be crowding out Women's Hour as it has been for December at least.
Yeah.
I think it would be good. It's kind of like the opposite of book club. I mean, obviously book club is a very big thing. But in terms of TV and teleseries or films, it's something that is around all the time. And there's so much out there and so many different genres. And some of them are great. Some of them are just downright ridiculous. So I think there would be so much to cover, so many opinions to be had. So yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Oh, great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's think about it, and if I get any more topic suggestions for films and TV, we'll do that as a separate stream. And it also means that I can have men on occasionally, although I do love my female contributors. My husband could be in it. We could have Pharaoh back to talk about more Disney movies, for instance.
I was gonna say I loved the conversation between you and Pharaoh about Frozen. It was really nice.
Well, he has a daughter the same age as mine. If anyone watching hasn't seen that stream, he and I came sort of head to head with our rather differing views on the ideology of Frozen. But it was a really good conversation, and we touched on a few other Disney films in the process of that, where we we thought about doing more streams about Tangled and Moana, and
I love Tangled.
I love Tangled too.
Best Disney film.
So yeah, well, let's try. Maybe we'll do it with Steven Universe next, because that is the next suggestion, and we can get maybe my husband will join on that, because I know he's seen, I think, a lot of the episodes actually, probably all of them actually, the first few seasons at least. strange as that may sound. And we could talk about Adventure Time as well, which is sort of a similar project that went on at the same kind of era of Cartoon Network. But to get to our title topic, this was requested by no one except that it was in the news. But I did say on Twitter, actually, first I'll read out this message which amuses me. 67, the number of this episode is by complete coincidence a prime number, apparently. I'm taking your word for it. But that is interesting. The episode about mathematics turns out to be a prime number, which is cool. Mathematics and chemistry teacher, welcome to the show. I've studied both maths and chemistry at A level, and as people know who've found the show, I am a professional engineer, so I have some sort of physics and maths background, and I personally love maths as a subject. But I will read the super chats before we get into it. From right out the gate, we have from DRT. Thanks very much. It'll join the heaps of topics that will be covered. I don't know what that was in reference to, but thank you very much for that.
Enigmatic but intriguing. And
if you would like to see us solving any problems, which was my comment on Twitter, they must be super chatted. I will make an effort to solve any mathematical problems that are submitted, but only if there is money with it. I'm not doing this stuff for free.
I one on Twitter, but if you need money, I got you.
Okay. Well, I do have the you chucked me on Twitter. I've done that one before, so I feel like it's cheating if I try to do that on the stream. I'll read it out just because it is rather amusing. You said it was a Harvard entry exam
from 1899.
From 1899. Maybe we'll just take this as a starting point for the conversation. A man bought a watch, a chain, and a locket for $216. The watch and the locket together cost 3 times as much as the chain, and the chain and the locket together cost half as much as the watch. What was the price of each? I wonder, Birdie, in the past you've said that you find maths most easy to contend with when it's in terms of real life objects and with money. So I wonder, how would you go about thinking about a problem like that? If I paid you £1 million to solve that.
I mean, if someone gave me £1 million to solve it, I would definitely make a point of solving it. First port of call, I would 100% have a piece of paper next to me, because I was talking to Alex in the car on the way down about just maths in general. I hate maths for a start. It's my worst subject. I am terrible at it, and I cannot stand it. I think part of that is the way I was taught. I was never really taught to do maths in terms of anything physical. It was all mental maths, and I cannot do mental maths to save my life. So to do this particular question, 100% get a piece of paper, categorize each piece, and go from there. Is the easiest thing I would do. I can't do it right now because I do not have a piece of paper with me. But yes, that's what I would do in terms of. But yeah, I do find it easier when maths is relatable, especially if it's something that, like this specific question, is something that you would have thought. It's to do with money. It's to do with a physical object. It's not, 100 watermelons. It's actually something that would have been useful. So it does make a hell of a lot more sense than today's math question.
I mean, even if it is 100 watermelons, that's a lot easier to digest than a huge bunch of symbols and variables and random lines over a fraction, and just says find X, and it's like, how about no? I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about this question that I really like is that it's a real life scenario. And it's not just a watch and a chain and a locket that costs something. It's got a little story attached to it. It says a man bought this. It's worded, other than the 216, every other part of it is written in plain English, no symbols or even numerical numbers, numerals. And I think the interesting thing about this, in my opinion, is taking the text and the information and putting it into algebraic form, which is the way that I was taught, that I've become really, it's become sort of second nature to to do algebra. I do have to see it written down, of course. I think only complete robots can do this sort of thing in their head. For me, having it written down would make it so much easier. But I would write it down first of all with algebra, and then that would be that's like a useful tool that I found, not just in in exams, but also in real life and in my job, where being able to do algebra quickly and being confident with it has been really useful for me personally, because of the industry that I work in. I guess a lot of people are saying in regards to this this new news about Rishi Sunak's plan to have all UK students studying maths in some form up to the age of 18, all students. I think a lot of people are saying that maths is completely useless for a lot of people. And to be honest, I kind of think that's kind of accurate.
I think certainly the way it's taught at the moment, it's definitely kind of, well, I say at the moment, I was last in school I can't do the maths on how long ago I was in school. I last studied maths 16 years ago. There we go. But my memory of it was, it felt hard to relate to anything I would need to use it for. It felt quite abstract, and it wasn't taught, to me, it wasn't taught effectively. So I can't remember a lot of the principles that would be useful for more advanced maths problems. I've got enough, numeracy that I can cope with everyday life. So I think it would be, it feels to me like a kind of utopian idea of, everyone would study maths up to the age of 18. If it were taught well, yes, that might be beneficial, that might be interesting. But to be honest, most people don't need that kind of advanced level of maths. And if you're extending, I'm rambling here, if you're extending the amount of time you're teaching them maths until 18, basically because you haven't covered the basics, that's an issue with the school system, not with how long they need to study it. And if it's because you love the subject and you think everyone should study it, well, I love obscure poets and I don't think everyone needs to study them. Probably beyond the age of 12, no one really needs to study literature.
No, I completely agree with you, actually, Havenwoods, in terms of, you can study maths until the age of 18, but if you're studying it in today's curriculum, I don't think it's going to help at all. If you, like you say, if the school curriculum is actually teaching it properly, then studying it until the age of 16 should be enough. But I'm similar to you. I don't really remember any math things that I learned in school because they weren't taught very well. I'm not afraid to say that I did actually fail maths in school, and I had to redo it in college. And I wasn't the only one. 3/4 of my class did actually fail, and I was in the second to top tier of maths. So that annoyed me more because we were meant to be learning, a higher level of maths, but the way it was taught was not to the same level, if that makes sense. So when I went to college, we ended up doing like extra maths, as it were. And obviously I was 18 then, so I'd already been through this, I have to learn until I was 18. And I hated it even more, but I understood it almost instantly because it was taught correctly. It was taught in terms of, I'm going to use this in my life. And because I was doing my college degree on top of that, so I was doing fashion photography and styling, so I used maths quite a lot in terms of measuring the material, etc. So I could relate it to what I was doing. Whereas in school, I had nothing to relate it to. I was staring at a textbook and nothing was going in. Our teacher didn't care, which was another issue. So if Sunak wants kids to learn maths specifically until they're 18, that's only going to benefit them if they're learning what they need to learn in real life. So if by the age of 18 they know nothing about finances, then why are you teaching them maths? Because those are things that I wish I'd known sooner. Things that are actually very useful in daily life.
Sorry, I'm getting an echo. I will need to isolate. Sorry, I didn't see who it was, but everyone's isolating themselves out of fear. Okay, I'm not getting it anymore from my end, but sorry, I have been doing my little maths exercise with the watch and the chain, just to keep it updated. So all I've done is I've put it simply into mine. I'm not sharing anymore. What on earth?
Oh, you weren't sharing.
I wasn't sharing the whole time. I've been doing this thing, but
I'm sorry, I didn't know. I thought you were waiting for them to.
That's not your fault.
Okay.
It was, like, I checked on the stream. It looked like it was sharing it. How odd. It said it was doing... Okay.
I mean, I like
Never
the
mind.
background. It's
Next-
pretty.
Yeah, right.
Maybe another time. I've been
You
here
could,
typing...
take a screenshot and then put the picture up, maybe.
I guess. But yeah, I've been sort of working at it. I thought it would be enjoyable for people watching at home, wondering why I'm staring intently at my...
I would have liked to see it.
So while you're figuring that out, I've actually got a question about maths questions in general for everyone. What do we think about, because we were talking about maths questions being stories in terms of being written out, played out, as it were. Do we find that easier to understand, or do we just prefer just to get straight to the question? Because I can find some maths questions to be ridiculously long. Like, I don't want to know about some foreigner with a fruit fetish. I just need to know the question. Like, what are the numbers involved here? Because I feel like that can put people off when there's loads of words involved, when you're actually supposed to be looking at the numbers.
I mean, coming from my perspective as a teacher, I'm not a math teacher explicitly, but the reason why you're kind of given a handful of these different types of problems is because every student has a very different learning style and different preferences when it comes to these questions. So where one kid may thrive by reading a word problem and creating an image in his head, it might jumble the next kid who doesn't really enjoy reading, who doesn't really have that same ability to make imagery in their head. Whereas jumping right to the problem, just giving you a handful of numbers and not really assigning any value to them in a sort of literary sense, that can throw off the same kid who was thriving earlier. So it really just depends. I mean, I feel like, this is very generally speaking, but I feel like women tend to sort of benefit from a real world application of these math problems by putting them into like a feasible word problem, like the one that I posted in the chat and that I DM'd to Poe. Whereas I think the male brain just kind of wants to just get it out, get it done with.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of maths questions that are sort of just turn the handle. Like they teach you how to solve that problem, and you don't really need to. Once you've learned the technique, you don't then need to really engage any proper thought. It's almost like you're a calculator. You just take in the numbers and you know what to do with them.
Yeah,
and that is a skill I think that you need to do maths at a kind of advanced level. But I also think it kind of misses the way that maths is actually applied in the real world, where there's nobody in real life is just going to present you with a formula. Like, they would just get a calculator or a Wolfram Alpha to do it. Like, if that was the case, that you need to be able to do that. But in the real world, you need to be able to take a problem and actually figure out what are the numbers involved. How do I write this down as an equation, as a formula? I'll give you an example, because I think we often talk about dating and that kind of topic in this, but I wonder how many people are familiar with the half your age plus 7 rule of dating and age gaps.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, I remember when I was at school and I had a kind of a crush on an older boy, and I was thinking about this, like, half your age plus 7 rule, and I wasn't yet old enough to be in his age range for it to stop being creepy. So then I thought, like, okay, how old do I have to be like, because as the point of the half your age plus 7 rule is that as you get older, the age range gets wider. So that I knew eventually I would enter the age range it would be appropriate for him to be in his dating range. So I thought, like, okay, well, how old would I have to be? So that's like a problem, so what is half your age? So it's age 1 equals half age 2 plus 7. So then you have to rearrange that algebraically for what is age, what did I say? Which way around was it? It was really hard with actually writing it down. Like, what is age 1?
Age divided by
so if age
half plus
2
7.
is 21, say, what is age 2? If age 2 is 21, what is age 1? And then you could also just, if you know how to do algebra, you can just flip that on its head and figure out, okay, so if you're, if you're the younger one, what is your, like, dating range in terms of, like, what is the inverse of the half your age plus 7 rule? Like, what is the upper range of people you can date? I find that like it was like one of the first times in my life that I can really remember applying a formula to actually formulate something, to write down the formula myself, having just heard it described as a principle, to write it down and to rearrange it.
I love that that's what you needed to work out.
I think it's awesome. That's great.
And that was the age at which I really started to like maths. I was very bad at doing calculations, like doing, what is 24 divided by 5 or something. All of the, like, take number, do something to number, and you weren't allowed to use a calculator. And I was like, what a drag. Like, once they started letting you use the calculator in the classroom, I suddenly became good at maths. And I never knew that I was before. And it became like something that I remember how proud I felt when other people in the class thought I was good at maths. Like, that was the only lesson that had ever happened to me in where people were like, oh no, she's like, ask her for help, she's good at maths.
See, here it's very strange because when I was a young kid in school, in my day at least, your proficiency at math was largely judged by how quickly you could do it, not how accurately you did it. And it always used to piss me off because I knew that I would be able to get all the problems right. But they handed us like these papers with like 100 questions on it. And they would give you like 5 minutes to do it. And they were just like, it was like 2 plus 2, 1 plus 4, 7 minus 3. And I would be able to do it if I took my time, but I was being coached to rush through things. So it worsened my actual like arithmetic skill of, because I would be rushing. So I would miscount because I was like the type of kid that really had to write things down or count on my fingers, and I would skip a few because I was trying to fit within this 5-minute time frame. And I just thought that was so stupid that I threw in the towel. I just didn't even bother anymore. And until I had a teacher who would go over the questions. She would read out all the correct answers, and she just had like a cadence of reading the answers that I memorized the order of the numbers, and then I sort of like made a song in my head, and I was like, all right, it's 4, 3, 7, 9. And so they just magically thought that I got really good at math, but I just had like a very autistic memory. But I have a similar thing that once we started, being able to work at our own pace and use calculators and not be super reliant on the actual like arithmetic behind it, but just knowing what to do with the numbers was enough. That's when I wouldn't say I enjoy math, but I got a respect for it. I knew how to use these skills in my everyday life, and it did become, sort of enjoyable in that sense.
I feel like maths is the most judged topic of all. And I don't mean in terms of like itself, so it's either a love or hate topic. I mean it like, as a person. So if you're really good at maths, then people automatically go, you're brilliant, you're great, you have a kind of respect for it. But I have it now where I genuinely get scared because obviously I do markets and things. If somebody wants to buy more than one thing, and they say, oh, how much is that? And then you suddenly go bright red because you can't think of the answer straight away. You feel like you're being judged.
I'm the same exact way. And it's more embarrassing because I'm supposed to be good at it that I can't do the mental math stuff.
And it's really annoying. So I feel like as a school kid, if you have that same sort of attitude towards it, it just makes it worse. Because if you feel like, oh, if you failed maths, then you feel terrible, right? So if you're then being judged by your peers, you're being judged by your teachers, because I had a similar situation as you, Cows, but in terms of, we were allowed to work under our own sort of time in class, but then when it came to the actual exam, we were handed the papers. And I remember the invigilator, sort of the woman who was wearing heels, shouldn't have been wearing heels, walking up and down the hall. And
Oh
she came
God.
next to me, and me being the little emo teenager that I was, I wrote "kill me" on the desk and slammed my paper shut. And she stood there and she laughed at me because I looked at this paper and I wanted to cry because I had to do it in this time bracket and I didn't know what I was doing. And it was because I didn't know what to do with the numbers. And that was the main issue. I understood the question, but I didn't know what to do with the numbers. And half of these questions we hadn't even learned in class. And I saw loads of my other classmates doing exactly the same.
Oh.
Being laughed at by the invigilator because you didn't know what you were doing completely put me off maths. So now, if I feel like anybody who has had a moment of just collapse when it comes to maths is now terrified of it. I am terrified of maths now. If somebody tells me a maths question, I just panic. And
Yeah,
it's
I know what
similar.
you mean.
for so many people.
It's a very common phenomenon. I think they call it maths anxiety. There was a whole episode of Aidan Paladin, who's been on this show before. She had a very long video just about maths anxiety, or math anxiety, as she called it. And I think what's happening is that to do maths in your head or even on paper, you need to be able to hold several numbers or concepts in your head simultaneously.
Yeah.
And when you feel at all anxious or self-conscious, it freezes your brain, like, so that you're no longer able to even hold, like, barely even hold like one thing in your head, let alone two. You can't sort of be thinking about like carrying the one or any kind of mental process will become more difficult once you start to feel anxious about it or frightened. It's you can imagine how it's really not the kind of thing. Once you get into like a fight or flight response, being able to compute a maths problem is like the furthest thing from your mind. So I think that's just my personal theory as for why a lot of people have that experience of saying like, I hate maths. Maths terrifies me, or like maths makes me want to cry. Like it's actually really common, and I think it's
I used to find
it's a shame.
Sorry.
Go on.
I used to find, like, when I was doing maths at sort of GCSE level, there would be moments, particularly algebra, I'd be doing it, and when you got the answer and you could figure out how to get, like, you could look at a problem and figure out how to get from sort of where you were to the answer and then do it. It felt kind of literally beautiful. And it could be just sort of weirdly moving, this sort of like, oh my gosh, that's how it's all come together. And I would get, like, I found it quite an exciting subject to study. And then because I was in the sort of top set and our school was very pushy, our teacher wanted a few of us to do like an extra step to our coursework, which involved something to do with calculating the volume of a globe inside a cone or something. And I just about understood what we were doing for a similar problem, but with 2D shapes. I couldn't get my head around making it 3D, and I genuinely had a proper like breakdown and ended up off school for about 3 weeks because my brain just snapped.
Oh,
So
What on earth?
I know. I mean, there were probably other things going on as well, but the maths was the thing that triggered it. So maths and me are no longer friends, sadly.
I completely understand. I mean, as everybody knows here, I am anxious 24/7. So I mean, you throw maths in there, and I have a severe flight reaction to it now. I will just run. But I do maths basically every day because I've got balanced books and things for my business. So I will sit there and do maths, and I still do not trust myself when it comes to maths. Like I will sit there and be like, no, that looks right, and then I'll Google it just to check because I don't trust myself because I've either gotten it so wrong in the past or I have literally been traumatized by maths. And I think a lot of people have a traumatized story, like yourself, Havenwoods, and myself. It's one of those subjects. Like, has anybody ever been traumatized by another subject?
I know. What is it about math that does that? I like used to be such a huge like math PTSD person, like in that era, until I started having to do it for my occupation, and now I like what Havenwords was saying. as someone who basically taught myself to cheat my entire way through math and either because for a large part of our coursework was online for some reason. I went to like a trade school and it was super weird. I figured out how to sort of like back engineer the system that I could get past like the firewalls on all the cheating websites, and I like hardwired calculators to use them in a way that they weren't supposed to be used. You know, just like a casual like IT kid things.
So cool.
Yeah, so I got like so good at cheating that when I actually figured out how to do the problem on my own, it was like such like a eureka moment. It was like, oh my god, I can actually do this without having to like be a secret agent like in the background.
It sounds like what you were doing was harder than actually just doing the homework.
It was genuinely easier for me to try to skirt around doing what I was supposed to do than actually just learn how to do it. Just mentally.
I have two things, and one of them is leading on to this part. So.
Okay.
One, cows. You need to teach me how to do that. I don't want to do maths, so just please teach me how to skirt around it. And
okay.
The genetics bit here. Numerical skills could just be down to genetics. Now, my mum, bless her, she brings this up all the time, and I'm not blaming her, but my sister is pretty good at math. My dad isn't bad. You know, he gets it done. My mum was told to drop maths in school because she was so bad. Okay, so I mean, she tells us this all the time, and I've never seen her struggle with a math problem. I've always seen her manage to work her way around it somehow. And I know she's better at working out, you know, bills and things like that than my dad is, and I don't know how or where or why that's kind of happened. And now I've kind of got the attitude of my dad in terms of I'd rather just give it to somebody else. I mean, I can do it if I really have to, but I don't know whether it's a genetics thing. I was never told to drop maths, which is a plus, but knowing that kind of worries me when they say numerical skills could just be down to genetics. I don't think any skill in school is down to genetics. I think everybody can be taught, and as we touched on earlier, it 100% depends on how that person learns. So as long as you're teaching it in the way that that person can learn it, then they're going to be able to learn it.
Yeah, I've heard that I respect cows as a person, as a teacher, but I have heard that the learning, the learning methods, what's your learning style has like problems with the studies that it was based on didn't replicate, or it was based on science that wasn't quite as rock steady as they make it sound sometimes.
Yeah.
Like the thing about like, are you a visual learner or a this or a that?
It's never as simple as that. I mean, you can use those as like general terms to kind of get you in the right direction as both a teacher and a student, but you know how to learn like yourself.
When I was in school myself, it's really weird the way that the teacher sometimes just has to throw out about 7 different ways of explaining something, and it's not like a repeatable pattern, like this person always gets it in this way. It's just like you got to just tell them the same thing 7 different ways, and eventually one of those ways will make sense for at least one. Like, and then hopefully when you get to the end of explaining it 7 times in different ways, everyone will have got it.
I might completely mindful this. There's a thing I've been learning recently through work. I've been doing an NLP course through work, and one of the things, I feel like a lot of NLP is probably BS, but some aspects of it, everyone kind of has a different kind of way in which it's a representative system, the way in which they sort of experience the world or relate to the world. And so some people do, and that's more to do with how you take things in and interpret them. I don't think it's so much a learning style as it is just the way that you almost talk to yourself and interpret the world to yourself. So some people have a visual frame of reference. So when you're talking to them, they'll say, "Oh, I see what you mean." Or, for other people, it's more kind of, it's that sort of kinesthetic thing. It's, "Oh, I feel that way too." And it's just the kind of the cues people use in their language indicates kind of essentially the way that they how they take in the world and how they interpret it. So
That's
possibly some of that.
I've heard that before. I don't really believe it. I think when people pick up a turn of phrase like I see what you did there, it's like I think that's probably just a habit they've picked up from when they've heard someone else saying that, or if, when they've when you just get into using these phrases that you trot out every a couple times a day. I don't know if that actually reflects how people are thinking. But sorry, I did want to get the stream out of the way, so I don't want to get the actual news item. And back to what Birdie said, I think that my personal opinion, people who have watched my channel probably won't be very surprised by this, is that there are probably a lot of subjects that you can learn, and pretty much everything in your life is to some degree determined by your genetics, and to some degree also determined by your environment, the way you've been taught, the way you've been raised. It's usually a mixture of both, but that doesn't mean that you can't help students learn, to the best that you can, but it does mean that you can't expect all students to reach the same level of adeptness or quickness at every subject. In the same way that you wouldn't teach all students to be able to run 100 meters in a certain amount of time. There'd be a level at which you could keep trying to make them get there all in under 15 seconds or whatever it would be. And you'd get some students who would do it right away, and there'd be some students who would never do it. And I think that's kind of how I think of maths. Like, there are some students, people, maybe like Birdie, where once you get down to the level of trigonometry and algebra, you could force them to really memorize each and every technique for answering these kinds of questions, but they would never really internalize it and really get it. And you probably wouldn't even be able to do that, I think, for some students. Whether I'm not just saying that they're thick. I think not being able to do maths is its own kind of skill, in the same way that some people are just tone deaf. Some people can't. I'm terrible at running. I could never run 100 meters, even I'd be like one of the slowest kids in the class, and that's just how I think of maths. It's like any other skill where it's not. You don't need to be ashamed. You don't need to feel stupid for not being able to do one thing. It's like that's just not your thing. And I think above. I want to go back to something that Simon Pegg chimed in on this. Did you see Simon Pegg on? I don't know if it was on Twitter or what, but it got shared on Twitter. I'll share this. I'm not going to play it because I don't know what the implications of sort of copyright are. But I can share it, and if I play it on mute, I'll read what he's saying. Because I think even though he was being really cringe and F Tories and all that, I too hate the Tories, and I also agree. I actually do kind of agree with what he's saying here, even if it is a kind of cringe leftist going nuts in their car sort of thing. So I'm just going to read it.
We hate them from the opposite direction.
Yeah. But the actual things he's saying, I kind of do agree with as well. I'm just going to read it. Rishi Sunak, our unmandated, unelected Prime Minister, twice removed, has decided that it should be compulsory for children to learn maths up until the age of 18. What a rude word. What about arts and humanities and fostering this country's amazing reputation for creativity and self-expression? What about that? What about kids who don't want to do maths? I hated maths. I dropped maths as soon as I could, and I've never needed it, other than past the skills I learned at age 12. But Rishi Sunak wants an army of data entering robots, and then it's just the rest of it is just F the Tories and all that. And I don't know exactly. Rishi Sunak has said why he thinks it's important to. So there's something here about brain development. If you just keep getting people who don't like maths to just keep doing it, they'll eventually. I think the idea is that it just makes them smarter, or that they'll get better at doing it if you just keep forcing it on them.
Yeah.
I think it's important to do all subjects. I'm not going to say I completely agree with Simon Pegg there, but I do agree to the point of all kids need to know what they like. right? So if you're doing maths more than the rest of the subjects, which is basically what Sunak is saying, he's saying, well, we're going to do maths until the age of 18. Well, what about the rest of the subjects? Because yeah, if you absolutely hate maths, and if you've got the basics, okay, which you get the basics by the time you are sort of 12, 14 years old, why are you going to want to do any more? I mean, what if you want to be a scientist? I mean, yes, there are some maths in science, but again, I managed to somehow get through chemistry and fail maths. I don't know how. That's
that is quite amazing, actually.
It's quite impressive. But you know, there are a lot of different subjects. You can't just make somebody do one subject until they like it. You know, that's not gonna work, I don't think. It's because every child is different. They're gonna like one subject more than they like the other. They might really like, I don't know, geology. They might, you know, they're gonna like something more than maths. If they want to do maths until they're 18, great, go and do an A level. You know, you don't have to do basic maths until you're 18.
What do we think about this this part of the justification about being equipped for the jobs of the future? Basically, Rishi Sunak wants us to be prepared for, you know, more programming and engineering jobs that are going to be. I think he thinks these are going to be key for the economy in the future, and as automation and you know, more robotics gets overtakes the need for sort of manual labor jobs and service industry jobs, we're going to need more people. You know, we're going to have fewer people doing those service jobs, you know, using their muscles, and we're going to need more people using their brains to program and to maintain and fix those computers.
So that's the flip side of that. I mean, aren't computers doing that for us now?
Okay, so
I mean, they're working out the calculations, they're working out the sizes we need. I mean, the only thing I would jump to on this is that Alex literally has a reference library for the sizes of different bolts on engines because they don't make them anymore. There isn't a computer that does that. Whereas now everything is computerized. Your parts for the car and parts for anything electrical is done by a computer. So we don't actually need to do the maths. You type it in and it's programmed for you. So I feel like there's a bit of controversy going on. He's kind of contradicting himself here.
This is exactly what I was going to say. I mean, just getting this out of the way, leave it to the Indian to try to codify tech careers. But anyway, the way that they're going about this is insane. In my school, I'm literally known as the tech teacher who hates math, purely for the reason that, Bertie, you literally just said that it's done for you. If you know what to do with the numbers, or if you know what to tell the computer to do with the numbers, your literacy with numbers doesn't really matter. Obviously,
but it's not. I don't think it's the. Sorry, I don't want to let you finish your point.
No, of course.
This is something I really want to get this out here because I wanted to make this part of the episode where to do maths at a certain level, it's not about the numbers. Doing my A level in maths, at a certain point, numbers are completely discarded, and it just becomes pure algebraic symbols and solving with, you know, graphs and things. And what maths teaches you, even if none of that actually matters, you never use any of it, is teaching you to learn a abstraction from reality. Like, it's teaching you to simplify reality into an abstraction map. Like I don't know how to kind of explain it, but you're one level removed from, or like several levels removed from an actual physical reality object, money, whatever it is. And that is also the same skill set that you apply to programming. Even if you're not literally using maths for programming, you're teaching your brain how to use abstractions in that way.
Well,
and
see,
the
thing is,
A-level maths. So to me, I was kind of like, okay, so you went on to do A-level maths specifically to learn that. So what?
It starts at GCSE though. Like when you start to learn geometry and algebra, that's when it begins.
In my head, it's kind of like, okay, if you want to learn that, you're going to learn that. Okay, right? So when you start it in GCSE, I'm assuming you already knew you wanted to do the A-level maths. So what Sunak is saying is that, okay, you don't get a choice here. You're going to go and do it. Now, I would hate to do that, and I would probably make a point not to learn it. So that would just be another couple of years wasted for me learning maths that I am not going to use, because that is not a field of any kind of job that I would want to go into. So I can understand those who want to go into that field of employment, but for those who don't, I think it's just a waste of our education system.
I mean, I agree.
I've got another question on that, which is the purpose of the education system.
that could be its own episode.
But I think the clue is in the, getting people fit for jobs of the future. This isn't about educating people and teaching them to develop it's not really about developing math skills. It's not really about developing kind of anything beyond you need to be chunked out as a relevant employee for,
line go up.
X. Yeah, line go up, economy go brrr. And, that this isn't about people's brain development. This isn't about, improving our sort of ability to go to space. It's just about churning out employees of the future. And he thinks this is what we need to do. And
disgusting. Yeah. But I mean, going back to what you were saying, Poe, yes, this does apply to programming a lot. But the thing is that as a programmer, you create an equation that sort of sets a digital environment for the computer to be able to take in variables that a user might input. Or if you're doing something like, I think that this article said something about data entry, or the video you said said something about data entry. Yeah. If you know how to set up an equation, not necessarily do the equation, then you're fine. And there's plenty of resources in these specific programs that you use. Or if you are apprenticing for like a tech position, for example, you'll learn these things on the job. It's not something that you're going to take from school and immediately be able to apply in the workplace. In fact, I think that flooding students' brains with this sort of stuff is inhibiting their abilities as employees, because they'll be so used to the way that they were doing it in an educational environment that it doesn't really transmit to a work environment, because there might be different ways of doing things. That's why, especially in tech, there's a big push for taking people in with work experience, not necessarily educational experience. Yeah, you might have a degree in computer science, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be a good employee.
I think what recruiters want to know is that you have the skill set, that you have the abilities that can then be refined into whatever it is that you need to do for your job. So whether it's with exams or education or work experience, you do need to be able to prove to employers that you can be taught to do things in this way easily. You need to prove that you're going to pick this stuff up quickly. I think that's what they want to know. Not that you know it already, necessarily.
I guess, but I don't know.
Sorry, Haven, was that you chatting?
Yeah, just the other brief thing that occurred to me while Kaz was talking was that, and I think we've sort of covered it already, but sort of, for example, my father is an academic. He's a social scientist, but there's a lot of stats and analysis and mathematics required to do some of the stuff that he does. And first-year undergraduates, they have to put most of them through a kind of extra, here's how to do the basic maths that you really should have been able to do about 6 years ago. Right. Now we can actually get on to educating you for the thing that you're going into 30 grand of debt for. So it's sort of, I feel like I'm rambling. It's way past my bedtime, but it's that thing of...
Thanks for joining us.
It's the combo of maths is taught incredibly badly. You're going to stick people in a classroom to teach maths incredibly badly at them until they're 18, whether they want or need to know it or not. And they're still going to get to university and have to be taught how to do it properly.
I saw an interesting... I've got it on the screen here. When I was talking about abstraction, I was actually aiming at another point, which was this tweet I thought was actually much smarter than... At first glance, I thought it was just funny. And then on second glance, I was like, actually, he's got a point. So the tweet says, when I'm Prime Minister, everyone will have to do music theory exams up to grade 8. Which is fine. I've done music theory up to grade 5. And the thing is that what I was saying about levels of abstraction, it is like music theory, it's not maths, it's not algebra or geometry. It's like a different level of abstraction where you have to think about sound and music in terms of musical notation and rhythm and chords. And actually, I think music theory up to grade 8 would probably be as intellectually rigorous and just as much proof out of sort of intellectual nimbleness as doing a maths A level, in my opinion. I mean, it's grade 8 is really very difficult. I only did up to 5, like I said. But I actually think like it wouldn't have to be maths. I think that music is extremely mathematical in some ways, and people who hate maths can do music. So even though I disapprove of the entire project and making people fit to be automatons to sit behind a computer in the future and do programming desk jobs, I actually think if that was your aim, doing making people study music if they really hate maths might actually be an intelligent suggestion.
Yeah,
I do have super chats to read.
Before you go on to super chats, can I ask one sort of very American question? So obviously, school.
Why do we say maths?
No, school over there is compulsory until 16. You take your A levels usually between 16 and 18, but you can take your A levels at any age. So with this legislation that math must be taken up until 18, if you take your A levels past 18, do you have to do the maths?
I don't know.
Education's compulsory until 18 anyway now.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
I didn't know
that came in about 10 years ago.
What?
Yeah, it's really annoying.
So you're forced to do A levels?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, or equivalent
or an
level,
equivalent.
like NVQs or
equivalent.
vocational.
Yucky.
So this literally, I'm going to show my age now. This literally came in the last year, well, just before I left school. So I was 16 in year 11, so 16 year 11, and they literally said last minute, oh, by the way, you actually have to be here until you're 18. And it was a very quick rush in terms of, okay, we've got to rush this year through to who's going to go into A levels, who's going to go to college. It didn't matter what you did, but you had to be in some sort of education, or I don't know if it's the same now, or a full-time job by the time until you're 18. So you had to have two more years of doing something skillful. So when I say full-time job, it had to be a skilled job, so either an apprenticeship or something where you're learning on the job. So you don't have to go into A levels as such, but I know some people who I went to school with, they did A levels, whereas I went to college, and then in my second year of college, they then joined college after doing 1 year of A levels. So I was technically a year above them, and I ended up being more qualified because I went to college instead of doing my A levels. So it did not work out great for some.
Yeah, I've heard plenty of stuff
real.
Like that. What if you're like, instead of going to your A levels, you're like a girl like going to cosmetology school? Are you still going to be like forced to do math there?
He says in some form,
like measuring hair
I'm
dye.
I mean, that's actually an intelligent way to implement this, would be to incorporate maths into other subjects. So if you are studying that, then maybe you'll do a little side part of calculating with money, like how to calculate compound interest on your on your savings, which is something that everyone needs to know, or diluting hair dyes and calculating if someone's got 50% more hair, do you need more? I don't know. I'm just coming up with suggestions, but that's the kind of thing that could actually be a useful way to implement this. Would be to look at what you're actually interested in, what kind of job you're interested in doing, and finding maths that is applicable to that industry. All right, I'm going to read super chats before anyone interrupts me again.
Sorry.
Not that you're allowed to interrupt me. That's the whole point of the show. But I do want that. It's my New Year's resolution to read all super chats. If you weren't watching last week, I must read them. Yes, sorry. Hunger the Dye Merchant. I completely forgot about this, but I did see this tweet earlier in this week with Jordan Peterson's outrageous new wardrobe. Hunger the Dime Merchant for $20 says, "Evening, ladies. I hope you take up my suggestion for Women's Hour special on Jordan Peterson's new wardrobe. It would be greatly appreciated." So that was going to be this week until I forgot about it. I've been on holiday all week. Thanks, guys. But yes, we'll, and unless something explodes onto the scene, we'll have to tackle that next week. And I don't think we have any higher paying super chats. So far, this will be the next subject. And even if it's not the highest paying, we must talk about it because it's really worth. It's almost like a topic made in, like schemed up by the fates who want Women's Hour to talk about this. Like it must be. It cannot be ignored. But I'm glad that we get to wait till next week because Amy might be able to join us, and she's our, other than Birdie, she's our other fashion correspondent. In my opinion,
I do have a degree in this.
Yes, I didn't.
Wow,
You're our first fashion correspondent, but being Women's Hour, we need two.
Yes, we need as many women's opinions as possible on this monstrosity of fashion discussion. So we will come across that next week.
We have another topic suggestion from Sir Garnet, but before tackling that, I want to stay on topic with the English Soilist for $10. Thank you very much. He says that math was never his strength. I can't see numbers in my head, but I know history and stories like a picture. Each of us have gifts and passions we need to follow. Great stream, Poe and ladies. Thanks so much, the English Soilist, and for all of your other super chats over the years as well. We've got €2 from Saints and Scholars. I don't know if there was supposed to be something attached to that, but it hasn't come through. I'll double check after the show just to see if there are any other messages attached later that didn't quite make it. From DRT we have $5. Thanks so much. I think Richie Sanook wants everyone to be a code monkey for Airstrip 1. That's a 1984 reference for anyone who, just like Lex Friedman, has not read 1984. Both bit tent parties on your side of the pond are WEF institutions. That's World Economic Forums. Completely agree with all of that. Thanks for the super chat. And I think that's just scrolling past. I don't think there's any more. So let's go back up real quick to our topic suggestion, which is not quite the winning topic because Jordan Peterson's winning right now. So Garnet for £10 asked us to address another Cartoon Network show, Ben 10 Generator Rex, and possibly the Clone Wars, which is a show I'm more familiar with but haven't actually seen much of. Shows from 2010s are often overshadowed compared to 90s and 80s. I think that's probably the nostalgia effect, although I don't know if there was a dark age of cartoons in the 2010s. I know that the Clone Wars is talked about as a good show, and that was, is that the one that was Genndy Tartakovsky, the Samurai Jack animator creator?
I mainly know it because I had a
sure.
flatmate who never stopped talking about it, so...
Yeah, well, that's not a winning super chat, but since we are now branching off into more live streams about TV shows and film, maybe that can make it onto the next my other show. But next week will definitely be Jordan Peterson. I'm cutting off suggestions as the show ends. We're not taking any more super chats.
Did you read Nathan CJ Hood's chat? He said that there was one from him that maybe got missed.
No, I saw it. It was ages ago. Thank you for reminding me. I seem to remember it was funny. There it is. Please review Spare by Prince Harry for £2, not on your Nelly.
What did we do to you, Nathan? What did we ever do to you?
But you have to pay us £200 for that one.
Yeah.
Money for me.
I saw one excerpt and it was talking about male body parts and weird things.
Elizabeth Arden cream?
Yeah.
Very weird. I know why Nathan posted that, and it's because I retweeted something that not so obvious put up, and it started a bit of a debate because I think it was cringy or weird. It was on my Twitter, so yeah, I am completely to blame for that super chat, but I'm not reading it. I don't want to read it. If anybody does, then please do in your own time, but no, just I feel embarrassed buying it. I don't want to be seen buying that book.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to contribute any money. The only way that I would read it would be if someone else was throwing it out, and I could rescue it and then throw it out myself in a more violent manner later.
If you want us to review that book, you have to buy it for us and physically send it to us.
No, because then they're still paying money. It's just not our money. They're still contributing to the.
Pay us money. But
pay us money, yeah, certainly. That's taken for granted. I'm just double checking that I can see the super chats lined up all on my YouTube dash, which I'm taking as a new habit for making sure we don't miss any. Oh my goodness, what have I just done? Okay, that's better. I fixed it. I was so frightened for a second. Okay. Yeah, I think that's. I think we've got everything. Jordan Peterson, Generator Rex. We've got Lincoln Shortlist and Rishi Sunak. So, I think that's everything I wanted to say tonight. Thanks so much, ladies, for joining me. Thank you, Havenwoods, for making it all the way to the end of the stream, and I hope you sleep well.
Thank you.
I'm going to be going to bed soon myself, it's been a long week for me, and thanks everyone watching. Next week, definitely Jordan Peterson's strange new outfits, but I'm sure we'll have other exciting topics in addition to that. I hope Amy will be back, so all the Simps will be rejoicing. And have a good weekend and have a good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.